First class of Unit 3, formerly called LiftOff. We still use that terminology, but Unit 3. So what we're going to try to do, we're going to go over, your project scope, talk about MVP, Agile, and if we talk about Agile, we always throw in waterfall as the counterpart to that. Project workflow. I'm going to mainly talk about project flow with Git. And then also within GitHub, they have a project management tool. So we're going to show off that as well. So project scope. I did copy and paste a lot of this, so this is a lot of words. But during this unit, we're going to try to build a group project. We're going to have to identify what our scope is. That means what are we going to complete at the end by the end of this? And to do that, we need to talk about what's called a minimum viable product, an MVP. So if I created a project where I could have users create a user account, but then they couldn't do anything else with it, could you actually give that off to somebody and would they find it useful? Well, if I can create users but not do anything, no, it's not useful. So you got to identify what will users be able to do that is useful. And at first, you can dream big. You can say, hey, I want all these things. But once you get your core function, like what your project is all about, you need to scope that down to doable steps, tasks that you will be able to complete in 6 to 8 weeks. That is something that I am very good at. I have to break apart tasks every day. Somebody comes to me and says, hey, I want to do this. And I'm like, okay, so if you want to do that, here's the 4 steps to get there. And so if you need help with breaking apart your tasks, reach out to me, but your IAs will also be able to do that. But that's typically what you need to be doing is it's okay to dream big a little bit to get the focus, the mission of your project, but then your project at the end should be runnable. It should have some functionality at the end. Tonight, you're going to decide on your basic project. This will extend to Monday. So Monday is more of the final date of you have to know what your project is kind of going to be. You don't have to break it apart into tasks tonight, but you do need to kind of decide on your project. Start deciding on your project, and then Monday, you're really going to finalize your project and start to outline those features. These are example features. So if you have a website or web application, you need to, let's say that you want to allow users to create an account and log in. I think this is one of the core features that most of you will have to have anyway. This is one of the, in my opinion, harder ones at the beginning as a newbie to do. But if you copy and paste and model all of this stuff over that authentication unit that we've done, if you Google this, it will not tell you to do it the way that LaunchCode did theirs. It will tell you more real world on how to do that, but then they're wanting you to hook up to an OAuth system and go through an OAuth workflow, which then gets very confusing. So my suggestion, whoever's doing these user accounts, I would model it more like what LaunchCode is, where you're going to store the users and passwords in your own database, and you're just going to look them up there and say, yes, they're logged in because the password works, or no, that it doesn't. So that is a call out that I definitely want to make sure that you guys know. If you go down the OAuth route, know that you won't get as much help and it'll be complicated. But another example feature, they're able to purchase projects that are associated with their profile. So if you want to do something with purchasing, that'd be fine. Be able to add a review to a product, or edit a review, delete a review. If you're looking at this, add, which is the create. Obviously, they're able to read it, update, which is the edit, and then delete. So that CRUD operations, that's what you're thinking through all of this, is how can I do those CRUD operations in everything I do? The user must be able to view a summary of inventory. This is if you're doing like a sales website, like a marketing, well, not marketing, a sales website where you're trying to sell things. So able to view a summary of inventory, like a checkout cart. Those are all different features that you could do if you're going to actually try to sell something. Website must allow for multiple roles, inventory, sales view, restricted based on user role. That's another thing that you can add. Whenever you create a user, you could have an admin user and you could have a customer user, and your admin user gets to do different things than your customer user. That's not just in sales, but in almost anything. Those are one of the features you can do. So let's talk about MVP. So it stands for minimal viable product. This is the version that it works. Remember how we talked about iterating over code? It's the same thing in your project. You want to get something that just works first, and then you can always add more features to it. So this minimal viable product is, as a group, you have enough features in place at their basic level that they all work together into forming this project that somebody can actually use. At bare minimum. See, minimum is the key word there. If you get your MVP done in 4 weeks, that's perfect. Then you can add more features on. That's fine. But if you can't get your MVP done in the first 6 or 7 weeks, you overscoped it usually. You try to add too much. So in my opinion, you should have an MVP and then you should have a phase 2. Get your MVP that you 100% are confident that you can get that done in the time allotted. And then if you have extra time, you can go to your phase 2. So I don't want you to not think about those bigger ideas. You need to be able to differentiate between this is the core product versus these are extra features. And so switching our mindsets, we're going to talk about a lot of different type of topics. So Agile and waterfall. So Agile is a project management methodology. It focuses on continual improvement step by step. Agile, if you think of an athlete that's agile, they can move and adjust quickly. Have you ever, like most people would consider like weightlifters, they're super strong, super athletic, but they're not agile. Rather than, I'm into soccer. A soccer player is usually very agile. They have to move side to side and adjust. If the other team does this, I'm going to do this. If another player's doing this, I'm going to do this. So that's what Agile came around is reacting to your environment. So the same thing here is instead of 100% putting all of our eggs in the basket right at the beginning, what we want to do is start down a path, and then as we hit roadblocks, as we hit other things, we can adjust and move, and we're not set in stone with exactly what we're doing. So how we do that in software development, we usually talk with clients more often. So as we go through this, it'll make more sense. So the waterfall method, can you ever take water that has fallen off the cliff into the water and push it back up the cliff? No, waterfall goes one way. That's one of the things. It's going one way. There's no circular motion. It's just all one way. So that's one of the analogies I use explaining the waterfall is once you start a project, you just continue on with that. It's important to set clear goals if you want it to succeed. If you want the waterfall method to succeed, small projects are fine for waterfall method. You have a clear goal, and then you just follow through with them and end the project at the end with no real reworking in the middle. It's just you start it, you get to the end, you're done. So the cycle that waterfall usually makes, you're going to define the requirements, design and develop a solution, and then you're going to test it, obviously, test the solution, but it is very straightforward. And to be honest, I don't want anybody to think that waterfall is like an awful plan. Waterfall has its place. Waterfall takes less time because you know what you're going to do and you get it done. That's all there is to it. So it takes less time. You don't have to go back and forth with clients. You don't have to wait on requirements. You don't have to wait on anything. You get all the requirements and everything set up front, and then you follow through with it and you complete exactly what the requirements are. So again, in a large scale system, this is not your best way, but whenever I'm working in internal IT, many of the things I do follow this waterfall methodology where I have clear requirements, I get them done, and I'm done. There's no like revisiting anything. Now, if you're talking about a web application, though, the struggles with especially these larger applications, let's say that I finish it and then I give it to the clients. They might come back to me and say, well, we really wanted this and this and this, and they consider those either errors or bugs that you don't even discover until the end of the project, and then you might have to redesign half of your project just because these features that you didn't find out were really bad until the end. It is harder to respond to changes. So let's say a client, they're asking you to do something, but even on their end, they didn't know ahead of time, but something on their end changed where they needed this added feature or they need to remove a feature. If you're doing true waterfall, you're not going to talk to them until everything's done. Where if they can be in the conversation as you go, where you're potentially demoing every step of the way, you're saying, this is what we have now. And then in a couple weeks or a month later, you're saying, this is what I have now. And then you're always demoing to them. They can they can tell you what give you feedback earlier, which then because you just touched that stuff, then you can make adjustments really quick rather than touching code that you did 6 months ago. And that kind of summed up both of them. Working within a schedule, it's not flexible, and then client feedback. So waterfall works in situations where it's easy to define. If you know your parameters and you know they're not going to change, waterfall is a very effective way. But oftentimes when you're dealing with true software development, your clients always want to change something. So that's why we go to Agile, where we are going to have the clients involved during the whole process. We are continuously asking for their feedback. Because we are continuously asking for their feedback, that means that we can tweak things along the way, which provide improved quality to that customer. If you just build a team culture that you are adaptable, that means that you can be responsive to what the customer needs what their customer needs right away, rather than wait until the end. You can also start predicting a lot of things. So it says each sprint. We'll talk about sprints here in just a second. Hold on. I forgot my shortcut to do my laser pointer. It's just L. Okay. So it says each sprint. We'll talk about sprints here in just a second. But a sprint is you're taking out some of your time there and chunking it. And then reduced risk, that's the biggest thing, is if I know what the client wants and I'm in continuous communication with them and I'm providing demos for them, there's going to be a lot less risk of them at the end saying, this is horrible, we're not going to pay you, because those type of things happen. And then obviously, I'm a very big communicator, so I always like this, but some people don't like the communication. But because the nature of how this Agile methodology works, through stand-ups and check-ins, you're going to have lots of communication, and you're going to know a full cycle what's going on. This is a picture that I found. The URL's at the bottom if you really want it. But this is one of the better ones that I found that kind of explains it at your guys' level. What you guys are going to do between now and Monday, really by the end of Monday, is you need what we would call a product backlog. These are all your features. What do you want your app to do? And then what you're going to do is you're going to change your whole entire product backlog into what we call a sprint backlog, which are tasks. These are things that are completable in like a week or less. They could technically be completable in an hour. I don't care how small you make them, but you should not be designing any things in your sprint backlog that take over a week. If you do, you're not breaking it down far enough. And then what you're doing is you're planning. You're doing a sprint planning to say, okay, so-and-so is taking these tasks, I'm taking these tasks, so-and-so is taking these tasks, and you're planning those out. You guys are actually implementing those tasks in code. You're going to review them, and all throughout this process, every day, you're going to be talking to each other. doing stand-ups. And then at the end of the sprint, you're going to have a retrospective, which says, over the course of these 1 to 4 weeks, all the teams I've been a part of have had 2-week sprints. So I'm going to always say 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be 2 weeks, but right before the 2-week sprint, I'm going to plan. I'm going to section out. These are the tasks I'm going to do. I have 2 weeks to do my code. Along the process, I'm reviewing my code. I'm reviewing others' code. We're continuously talking every day in stand-ups about what we are doing, what struggles we have, how we can help each other. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, I'm going to have a retro that we're going to say, okay, over the last 2 weeks, what went well, what didn't go well, what can we improve on? And these can even be not the actual sprint task. These are usually processes that I have in place. Like, can we make our checkout code better? Can we make our code review process better? Can we make, our deployment process better? What are the things that are even slowing us down to just do our daily jobs? And we can talk about that in the retro, and then try to improve those processes so that the next sprint things go faster and better, more efficient. So you're continuously talking. And then every single sprint, you have to have completed tasks. And you see how these are all chunked apart, but then when you put all the chunks together, they form the final product. So it's switching that mindset to chunking everything you do, only developing that one thing until it gets completed, always talking, communicated, and then moving on. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. For you guys, for this LiftOff, I'm gonna challenge you guys. You guys should be doing almost 1 week sprints, whether those are on Mondays or Thursdays. I don't care really which ones they are. I think as a group we might decide, as the IA group and me, that one of those check-in, like one of those class periods, are more of a retro, where we do a 1 week retro of what could we have done better as a group this week. Could that have been better communication? Can we break apart the task a little bit better? What processes can we do better this week on? And we need to do that once a week. So this sprint for you guys, I'd want to do once a week with very, very small tasks. These are, I kind of went into this already, but we're going to use a condensed version of Agile. We are going to do these are supposed to be daily, because remember, I'm in the workforce, I'm working every day. So daily stand-up. For you guys, you'll do a stand-up every Monday and Thursday with your group, no matter what. I would challenge you guys to find a time other than Monday and Thursday to add in at least one more stand-up. That's the teams that met more often, short periods of time. These aren't like, oh, we need to meet for 2 hours. No, this is, hey, can we all get together for 15 to 30 minutes? 30 minutes at most, but 15 minutes. Can we get together 15 minutes and just go over what did each of us do? What blockers do we have? Because if I, on Monday, start something, and on Tuesday morning when I'm working on it, get stuck, and then I don't talk to anybody until Thursday, and then somebody Thursday has the answer for me, and they just said, hey, just do this. And you're like, I just got stuck for 2 days, and all I needed to do is ask somebody. The problem that teams have is you don't want to always ask every single time you have a question. That's hard to do. So on Tuesday morning, it's hard to blast the group and say, hey, I have this question. Can anybody help? Well, they're all thinking about their own things. We dedicate time for stand-up so that everybody stops what they're doing, and we all communicate, and it's giving everybody the validation of, okay, talk about what you're struggling with now. Can we just in this small amount of time figure out at least points that we're not fixing your problem, but we're giving you suggestions. Oh, I had that problem before. This is what I did, or this is the link that I looked at last time. We're not solving it for the other person, but we're just giving them ideas to get unblocked. So these stand-ups are super important to me. Sprint demos. Some teams do in the real world. Some teams do demos. I think the teams that do demos know about their product better. Meaning, if you're working on this functionality, this functionality over here, if you never demo that to your group, they won't really know what that functionality is. They don't need to look at the code. You don't need to say, oh, you want to look at what I did, go look at the code. Well, that's going to take hours for them to look through the code. But if you say, hey, this section of code, you don't have to look through it. I'm going to show you what it does. And then you show them in the UI or show them through Postman or show them through anything, demoing off what you have. Then the whole group knows what everybody else is doing and they have that visual of that. So again, what I would do is kind of go back and forth between a retro and a demo almost every Monday, Thursday. And then the retro will lead into the planning. So the demo, you show off your work, you do a stand-up, you show off your work, vice versa. It doesn't matter which order you do that in. And then the other time you meet, you're also going to do a stand-up, but you're going to do a retro and planning. A retro is like, okay, for the last week, what things went well, what things didn't. And then that should help you with planning for the next week. What are we going to do different? We're also going to assign new work. So that's what the planning is trying to assign new work and figure out what processes you're going to change. Okay. Now that your brain's starting to get a little full, we're going to switch gears again. That's what we're going to do. Before we get into here, I am going to read some of the questions. So if you want to take just a little, like 30-second mental break while I read the questions, that's fine. So one great question. Do you remember how good you were at this kind of stuff whenever I was still new? With the retro stuff, I was teaching Agile development stuff to high schoolers. So even though I'd never done it in the real world, I definitely had a good grasp of all the underpinnings of what you're doing, why you're doing it. So when you're talking about project structure, Agile stuff, I felt like I was on par. Like I knew exactly what I was doing. Do college kids come out of college and know that stuff? Not really. They have seen the textbook version, but they've never actually done it in a group. That's why you guys in this project will actually, in my opinion, be more employable than some of the college kids that I see, because you guys will actually have worked with the group and implemented these things, like did them, not just talked about them. On the other hand, Git. Git is a different one. I was not that good at Git until I got into the real world. I thought, I mean, I could do the basics just like what you guys could do now, but Git is something that you just have to do over and over and over and over again. And then it finally, you're like, okay, now I understand this. So you guys are right where you should be on that. So if you get everything done, should you try OAuth? I'm not discrediting OAuth. There are ways you can find plugins. Like if you do Spring Security, they'll allow you to hook to like Facebook. And so then you can sign into Facebook, and then it pulls your Facebook email and basic user properties, maybe first name, last name. And then you can implement into your thing where it actually uses Facebook to log you in rather than creating your own. There are some of those that are kind of easy and you can plug and play. The problem that I have there is you don't learn as much about the full stack. Or if you have a problem, nobody's going to help you. So could you do it at the end? Yes. Do I do it? Yes, but I also work with authorization all the time in my daily job. So I really do understand how JWTs work, how how claims, user properties come across. That's what I do. So I think we talked about waterfall. I think I saw some of those today. Talked about those. So for example, would a graded assignment task be akin to a sprint? No, a graded assignment, like when you took a graded assignment and there was like 4 tasks, potentially, you could break it down probably even further. Yeah. So Craig was saying that some of these agile processes, reflections, they're definitely helpful. It feels awkward the first couple times you guys meet because you're like, who's going to state that something did wrong? Luckily, you guys have experience together that failure is a common theme. So just embrace that and talk about it, and then get past it. You guys are really talking tonight. I'm not upset with that. It's just taking me a little bit longer. Git project stuff compared to Jira boards. They're close, but they're not identical. I'll show you those. Yeah, JWT auth is my favorite to go to because that's most real world. I use Spring Security though, but Spring Security changes like every 2 months. So if you chat GPT it, it will be 100% wrong. So you have to read the documentation, which is hard for a beginner. So I will talk about the different IA stuff here in a little bit. So I will, oh, and I think Lexi's answering those. Good job. Sorry. All right. Now that we've had a little bit of a mental break between that, let's talk about Git. So for LiftOff, we're going to be doing Git every day. You're going to be typing, you're going to be typing Git so often that it's just going to be part of your normal vocabulary. So we are going to be breaking down. I'm going to try to work through that Git process. That's what I'm going to actually show a lot tonight. So the lecture will be a little longer tonight, but it's because I want to show you a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to show you all of this stuff. You're going to be using GitHub. You guys already know how to do that. Just a reminder of some of the commands that you've used quite a bit is that git status, git add, and that's a dot afterwards. Remember, you have to say what you're going to add. If you type the dot, it'll add everything at that directory and subdirectory underneath it. There's the git commit with a message. Always include a good message. Now you're going to have other people looking at your messages. Don't overthink it, but definitely be a little bit more descriptive than some of you have been doing. And then the interesting part is usually you have not had to do this git pull very often because whenever you push your code, your local and remote are the same at that point. So you don't have to re-pull it back down. But now that other people are going to be pushing code, you have to pull their changes down. So you will be using this git pull quite a bit. That's to pull somebody else's changes down to yours. We haven't really done a lot of merge changes. But then you have push. So whenever you push, now this says main, but remember that can be any branch. We've just mainly been dealing with the main. So this is a typical workflow for solo projects. And it says here, pushing your code to the main branch. But since you're going to be working on different branches, we're going to change that a little bit. We're going to kind of try to pull in Git and project management into the same, at least talking. So project management, this Git lifecycle and project management go hand in hand. As we set up our project, we're going to be using GitHub projects. It's another tab on GitHub that has always been there, but we haven't touched before. So we're going to, it says that you should have watched the 2 videos on projects. I'm not expecting you to have done that because that was just shared with you, I think, today. But I'm going to go over a lot of the stuff you need to. If you want to level up your skills on projects, go ahead and watch these 2. They go above and beyond what I do. I'm just showing you what I would do in my instance at the level that you guys are at. Well, not even at the level you guys are at. Whenever I work on a team, I don't do a lot of this project management stuff. Like I have a project manager that puts the tickets in the backlog, that flushes out a lot of the business needs. I just add a little bit of technical stuff to the task to make sure that my technical matches up with their business needs. And then I do walk it through the flow. But a lot of that heavy lifting at the beginning, I don't do as a developer. Somebody else does. Yeah, you can do git stash and git pop. I don't. The Git stash on IntelliJ, so in my day job, I do use a stash, but in IntelliJ, it's called a shelf. And it's a visual representation. I might try to show that if I remember it when we get to that part that I want to show you. But yes, Git stash is important for some things. I've never used Git pop. I use Git rebase. Git rebase is my go-to for everything. So even if I want to stash, it doesn't do stash. When I want to do anything that's manipulating code or Git commits, I use Git rebase. Right. These are things that I typed in. So everything here is my suggestions. I will definitely, I mean, the video will be on recording, but I can probably post this in a channel as well. But these are my suggestions to work through in team meetings. So when you guys come together on Monday and Thursday, and you're sitting down with your group, these are things to do. You're going to go around to each person and you're going to answer these questions. So what have you completed since last time? You are telling everybody what you completed. You're going to tell them, hey, did you have any blockers? Whether you figured them out or you haven't, if you have figured them out, you're going to still tell people, I had this blocker and I completed it this way, because you are trying to share as much information with your team in a short amount of time and allow them to ask questions and gain knowledge off of you. So if there's any blockers, how did you complete them even? Or do you still have blockers? So then you open it up to your group to say, hey, do you guys have any pointers for me? You're also going to tell them what you're planning to do before next time. This is super important to me. Not every team feels like this is important, but I know as a parent, when my kid, if I can get them to say and commit to something and say, I'm going to do this, they are way more likely to do it than when I say, hey, can you do this? And they're like, yeah, I'll try. When you do that half trying, maybe, whatever, sometimes you just don't do it. When you fully commit to saying and say, I'm going to complete this task before next time. Now, do I get upset whenever my team says that and they don't complete the task? No. But I know it's one of those things that they feel. I don't have to yell at them because they feel bad when they don't meet up those expectations. So that's how I lead my team, is like, you're going to commit to me what you're doing. It's okay that you mess up. It's okay that you ask a lot of questions, but I need you to commit to it. So it is important for you to announce to your team, this is what you're going to do before next time. And then you're going to also allow people to ask you questions and go around. This is what a stand-up should look like. Sprint planning. So this would be once a week, whether it's on Monday or Thursday, once a week. You're going to go through, we call them stories or issues, incidents, whatever you want to call it. But this is where you manage that system as a group. You're going to create issues for features. So if you're like, hey, we didn't talk about this feature before, but we need to add it, you can go ahead and add those issues. This is going to go into your product backlog because it's not really funneled. Like, you didn't go through it all the way. You didn't break it apart into tasks. It's more of just, hey, here's some features I want to do. And then what you're going to do is you're going to break those issues apart. Now, if you have enough tasks to get you from one week to the next week, these top two, you don't have to do every single time. These are what you want to do these, but you don't need to spend an hour doing these. You just need to spend enough time to get enough tasks for you to get through the week. You want to break these features up into issues, actionable tasks that you can get done in 1 week or less. You need to have enough documentation for anyone. I should have said anyone, but it says for someone to be able to complete. What's going to happen about halfway through the course, somebody is going to be able to knock all the things out that they kind of wanted to do, while somebody else is going to get stuck and go a little slower than they would like. That is not because one is better than the other. Sometimes that person that goes through a little faster, they were able to type the right words into Google to get the right information they needed faster. It does not mean they were better. It means they found the documentation they needed a little quicker. So I want you to remember that when you're working on a team, this will go back and forth, because as soon as you think that somebody's better because they're moving faster, they will hit a roadblock, or if that's you, you will hit a roadblock, and you'll be right in the same shoes as somebody else that went a little slower. That's how software development works. Sometimes you move fast, sometimes you don't. So make sure that you are able to anybody to complete these, because whenever you get caught and you just can't get this thing figured out, somebody else needs to take the next task. They're not going to take yours. You are the expert on yours, so you're going to keep working. But you need the documentation on a task so that anybody can pick it up whenever they need to. Whenever I write documented tasks, the biggest thing I stress for my team is I want the expected outcomes. So if I say that I want this feature, that's great, but what does that feature mean? And some people struggle with what to declare what a feature is and what it really means and all that kind of stuff. If you say at the end, if this is the whole entire, I would type this whole thing out. If a user clicks this button, this form should appear. That can be one task. That's an issue. Make it an issue. And a sequential issue after that is, well, once you get a form to appear, when the user fills out these properties on this form and hits submit, this outcome happens. That's the kind of documentation I want as a programmer. It's very black and white. I don't want create a form that a user fills out. It's too vague. I don't know what's going to happen at the end. So you're always trying to figure out what are the exact outcomes you want at the end and put those in the issues or the tickets. Also, make sure that you can complete these in 1 week or less. I would rather you have a ticket that takes 1 hour, you go ahead and complete that ticket, and then you go grab another ticket that only takes an hour and then complete that one and then go grab another ticket. It will seem very kind of like, well, why didn't I just combine these 3 into 1? It would take me the whole week. There is that philosophy, but I'd rather it be, well, if the first one you got stuck on, then somebody else can pick up the other one. So always break it into tasks and prepare for somebody else to pick up the tickets. No, okay. Vocabulary, the reason why I use issue is because GitHub, the way that we are doing these, GitHub will create issues. An issue could be a bug. So if you guys are testing something and you're like, I thought everything was good, and you pushed your code and everybody thought it was good, and then 2 weeks later, you realize that there's a bug in there, you are going to create an issue, but it'll be a bug issue. It will not be a feature issue. So in GitHub, there's different types of issues, and I'll go over that. But I do agree with you that issue sometimes means like a negative thing. That's why in Jira, they're called stories or tasks. In ADO, they're called tasks. So every software calls them slightly different things. I'm going to continuously use the word issue just so that whenever you see GitHub, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about on GitHub. The other thing that I'm maybe going to hopefully show you is some merge conflicts, what they at least look like. So you guys can hopefully help with those. Now, this is a Git with your team. Do you see how none of this is typing in Git commands? But we will be working on GitHub with their project management and issue stuff. So you're going to be working on GitHub with all of this, but then individually, so in between your team meetings. So on Tuesday, on Monday, you said, hey, these are the tasks I'm going to complete. On Tuesday, you get your issue, your task. You're gonna find that task in your project that is in ready state. I will explain what I mean by ready state in a little bit. You're gonna move it to in progress. I, as a leader, or I as a project manager, should be able to know what tasks are getting worked on at any given point. That's very important to leadership. That's very important to the business units that you are reporting to. You can either write them a message or you can take this little task, move it over to ready state, and you've communicated. So I don't know which one's easier for you guys, but me moving a little thing over once, and that's how my business wants me to communicate, I like that. Whenever you move it to in progress, you are going to assign it to yourself. Again, I'll show this. You're going to create a branch from the issue. Remember, issue is a GitHub term, and I'll show you how to do this. You are going to that's follow directions. GitHub does tell you directions. It says type these things into your terminal, and you just type those in. You're going to add the code to your feature branch. This branch that you just created is called a feature branch. You're going to push your code. You're going to commit and put, like, you're going to add your code locally. You're going to commit and push your code to the remote, which is GitHub. And then you're going to create this thing called a pull request. When you create a pull request, you're going to move your ticket on your project board to in review. In review for us is your code review. That means it's no longer yours, it's somebody else's to look at and review. So you need someone else to pull down your branch and run it locally to verify that everything that should work works for them. If it doesn't, the two of you need to communicate, hey, I'm getting this. Is this what you got? What's not working? And you guys got to come to a consensus on that. Once that person approves your pull request, because you're requesting, a pull request is a request to push your code into the main branch. That's what you're requesting to the team. You're saying, hey, my code's good enough to go to main. I'm requesting somebody else to look at it, accept it so that it can go to main. Once they accept it, you're going to merge it to main. And again, I'm going to walk through this process here in a second. This is what a GitHub flow should look like. As you guys are looking at this, I'm going to look at the questions real quick. So look at this and I'll explain it here in a second. Micah, you have an amazing question. You will just check it out, and Git will change all of your code. Now, I guess I should call out that when you check out somebody else's branch, that's where that Git stash comes in. You either need to stash your changes or you need to just commit them. And my suggestion is just commit your changes before you check somebody else's branch out. You could actually put code in two different locations. You can have like your code in one location and their code, like do a git pull it down and have theirs in a different location. There's personal preference to all of those. What I do is I just commit my changes so they're not lost. I switch over to their branch, I run their stuff that they need, and then I switch back to my branch. And because I committed mine, all my stuff is there. If you do not commit and you switch, sometimes it pulls your stuff over to theirs because it like thinks that you want to pull your stuff over. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes when you go back to yours, it like removes all your changes because it didn't know to keep them. So there is some weird Git stuff. Part of this process is you figuring out what you like and what will break, because things will. My suggestion, what I do is I commit decently often. But then as you look at all of this, all of these are different commits, right? These pink ones are different commits. Your commits start to get jumbled up. So then that's where my favorite tool, Rebase, comes in. What I'll do is I'll commit. And then at the end, I will rebase and squash and merge all of those commits into one. And I can show how to do that at a later date. That's not what you need to be focusing right now. Right now, you just need to commit and push your code. And if you push 7 commits, your team should be happy that you have working code. So, so commit your change even if what you're working on is not in working state? Yes. So commits are just checkpoints. I would not push your push your code up until it does work. So never push your code unless if it works, but you can commit as much as you want to. It is advised to commit working code, but again, you guys will find your own technique. I will show my process at a later date. It's too much for right now. You guys are, but yeah, I'll show mine, but mine's rebate. So I just want to go over this thing since you have seen it, looked at it for a little bit. If you notice, we aren't doing this exact process because they have a master branch, which is your main, that GitHub uses main. Git by itself defaults to master. So when you see master or main, those mean the same thing. And master goes to production. This is production code. So sometimes whenever you have production code, you find a bug. So what you do is you make what we call hot fix, which is a critical bug fix, and you're going to push it directly into your production code because you need to get it out there as fast as possible because clients have a problem. So these are bug fixes. You push those up. As you're working though, a normal stream. So let's say we don't have any bugs. You're actually going to have a develop branch, and your develop branch will every however long. For me, it was every sprint. On one of my teams, every 2 weeks, whenever we completed our sprint, we would merge, we would sync our develop branch with master. But we don't do it for every commit. We do it for every what we call release. So our clients would get a new set of code every 2 weeks. And so we would push that code to develop, and then that would get up to master. So they have release branches. In my last company, or my last team, master was the actual branch. And what you can do is you can do what we call tags, and we would tag the branch releases. So instead of having their own, like this is green down here, instead of them having their own, these two would be the same, and we would actually push straight from develop to master. So we didn't have this green column here. But you see how down here, this is where you guys work. All of this stuff up here, the further you get up in a corporation like this, the less you will be touching this. Such as several of our teams, the engineering would push the develop, but then that's it. They wouldn't touch the develop. There would be a team in DevOps that would grab the develop, sync it with their master, and then deploy that master. So depending on your company, you may never touch your master branch. It may only be the develop branch. And then in between here is QA. So QA is QAing this develop to say that everything's good, and then they help that process to go to master. And then once it gets to master, the development team, the DevOps team, your operations team, pushes it out to production. But if you look down here, these pink ones, you can have many different features. Unfortunately, this is what Git looks like in a real situation. So whenever you think that you have it mastered, you will not have it mastered because there's another layer. And switching gears just a little bit, still talking about Git. This is my suggestion, and I'm going to show this here in just a second. The IAs are going to create your repos. For your IAs to create your repos, they need a group name. So whenever we break apart, the first thing you guys are going to do is come up with a group name. It does not even need to match what your project is, because your project will be whatever it is. But your group name, be creative, have fun with it, but it's going to be your group name. We also need your GitHub usernames or email addresses. I like GitHub usernames better. So group name and everybody members GitHub usernames. So those are the two things that you, within the first 5-10 minutes, we'll need so that we can go create the repos. Inside this repo, though, we will create the repo, but that's it. All of this stuff inside here, your team has to do. This is not the IA's job. This is my suggestion. This is not LaunchCode, so you guys can come up with whatever. They give you guys free reign. This is my suggestion. I would like a project folder for the UI. So let's say that my app is a to-do app. I could do to-do-UI. That stands for my front end. You could also do to-do-front end. I don't care what you name it, but one folder. This is a folder. And to create this folder, I'm not going to create it in Git. This folder will automatically get created when I do the npm create vite command. That's going to create my front end. I'm going to select React. I'm going to go through all of this process here in a second. Is it valid to have separate repos? Yes. For this project, you only get one repo, because I, as an IA, I'm not going to create 10 different repos because you want to do whatever you want to. I'm going to create one and say, figure it out. So for this, you want one. But I'm also going to show you what I would do. You guys can do whatever you want to. Project folder. You also want one for your backend. I would, going back to my to-do example, I would do to-do-API. That's what I would call it. Or just to-do API. The dash doesn't have to be in there. The way I get this folder is I'm going to go to start.spring.io. I'm going to create my Spring application, and then I'm going to take that zip and I'm going to extract it to this. And that's how I'm going to create that. And I'm going to show you how to do all of that here in just a second. The other recorded video to go back to. I am going to suggest that the IAs create a repo that has a README file in it. In your README, for me, I want to be able to go to all of your guys' repos and actually run your stuff. That's what I want to do. But I need your help doing that. And you are going to tell me in your README file what your application even is. And you're going to tell me, how do I get it running locally so that I can run it? So that's what this README needs to be. Is what is your application? How do I, as a person not on your team, going to be able to get your code running as fast as possible? And then, this is my experience. You know that whenever you do a Git repo, there are .gitignore files. Here's the problem. Whenever you create this UI one, it's going to create a .gitignore in your UI folder. When you do the start spring.io, it's going to create a gitignore for that one. And then you're going to have somebody on your team, it'll probably be you, that tries to open this stuff up in VS Code or an IntelliJ or something else in the wrong location. It's real easy to do. You just click on the wrong folder, it opens up in VS Code, and then guess what? VS Code now has a .VS Code there, but your gitignore is somewhere else, and then now your VS Code configuration is getting pushed up to your Git repo. Your node modules are now getting pushed up to your Git repo. All of those things happen. It's very normal. So what I have done is during my last cohort, I created like what I would consider a master .gitignore. I put this in the lecture resources. My suggestion is this should be one of the first thing that goes in your project. This will save your team a little bit of headache later on when somebody opens something in the wrong thing and then pushes their code and they push all the node modules, and then it's like 16 gigabytes of information that the next time you try to do something, it freaks out and it doesn't let you do. So this is my suggestion. I did put this in lecture resources yesterday as I remembered it and created it because I thought I'd forget about it today if I didn't. So file structure. Oh, yeah. That was it for the lecture part. I'm going to answer the Q&A part that I did see on the lecture questions, and then I'll go into showing you some things. So first of all, this again, we'll create two projects, one for the front end, one for the back end, and deploy each separately, or do we need to deploy our capstone to a singular project? The vocabulary is weird on this. You will have two different technical projects, but they'll be in the same repo, which I know that it's just vocabulary. As long as you guys understand what I'm talking about, I think we're all on the same page. And then will we go over website hosting and deployment at some time? Depending on how we are towards the end of Unit 3, I would love to talk about a little bit of hosting deployment. I tried to look up, somebody told me to go to Oracle Cloud because they have a bigger free tier. So I'm going to do that on my own free time in the next month or so. And if I can show you guys how to do that, then that's fine. I know how to do this in Azure. It just costs money. It doesn't cost a lot of money, but it does cost money. And I don't want to show something that you guys might have to pay for. And or if you sign up for AWS and deploy, and you forget to turn it off, and then they give you a $120 bill at the end of the month because you forgot to turn something off. Like, I don't want that kind of stuff. So if I show you anything, I will be very upfront with the cost. And if I would do that, those kind of things. But I'm hoping that I can show you just a little bit. It's nowhere near what you would need to know to go into that type of job, but it'll help you with just the software development lifecycle. Actually, that was copy and pasted from last time. So, no, that was it. So I'm going to switch off of this. As I'm switching off of this, any quick questions? Yeah, are you guys going to memorize that due date forever? There you go. That's a lot of names. I want to go to GitHub. So what I'm going to show you now is exactly how, if I was starting this project, I'm going to do some of the stuff that I'm going to do for you guys as I'm filling in for a couple IAs, and I'll talk about that later. And this is what I'll be doing in the background whenever you guys are doing your meeting. And then, but I do want to show you what I'm doing so that you guys can see if you wanted to do your own project at some point after LaunchCode, this is what you would do. So you're going to create a new repository. I don't have any real good templates. The owner for your guys' project, the owner will actually be LaunchCode's organization, but you do need to name it. And so how about Glowing Dollop? Does that sound like a good? There we go. Right. So you can name it whatever you want to. I'm going to name it this just because I saw it there. And again, this is going to be my project structure that I'd want you guys to have. You could do private or public. Once you get too many privates, you have to start paying for it. So I would just do public unless if you really do not want to see things. And again, for this project, I am going to add a README and a get ignore template. I'm going to have my own, so I don't care that they do that. Licensing, if you guys want to Google this, I think we are told that if we want to, we can talk about these. I get super confused about these because every single time I read about one, then it changes and then a new one comes out. So if you guys really get interested, you can read about all of these. I just usually do none because none of my projects I finish well enough that anybody wants them. So then I just hit Git repo. This is what I would do. Once you know what your repo is, then what you're going to do is you're going to go find a location. I'm going to go do this LaunchCode fun. I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to my terminal. And I need to pull this down locally. So it doesn't matter where this is at. You just need to remember. I'm going to say git clone. I'm going to get this. Paste it there. And here is my, that doesn't help you guys see a single thing, but because the text doesn't get bigger, just okay, so here's my folder here. And now I have a .git, which is the Git configuration for GitHub, and I have a README file. My README file is just a generic one that says my repo name. One of the first things I would do is go and grab the git ignore. You would think that I had this already. Git ignore. There we go. Lecture resources. All right. I'm going to do a add new ignore. I think I spelled that right. Oh, yep. I'm going to open this thing up. I'm going to plop the information. Remember, all of this is in that. I'm going to ignore node modules. So the difference is, just so you guys want to know, the node modules, if you notice in yours that come out, it'll only have like 1 star or no stars. And that's because the node modules is in the exact files, like in the folder that your VS Code will be in, which is like your React app. But if I do star star, it's going to ignore all node modules no matter where they are in this repo. So it's doing like a wildcard search, and it says, I don't care where you're at. You can be in the same structure, in the same folder or in a different one. I'm going to ignore these every single time. So same thing with the .idea. What happens usually is I open up like my React in IntelliJ on accident, and then it takes this folder, and now that folder, because it's not get ignored in that specific location, it then gets sent to my repo. So it's technically, you can add it however you want to. I just said, yes, add a new text file, but then I deleted the .txt. You do not want the .txt in there. So you can do that. And let's say that I want to check this out. So git status. Oh, it's not a Git repository. That's because I didn't go into it. You see how I'm still in fun, and my repo is that one. So I need to change directory into that. These are the kind of things that's going to happen, and you're going to accidentally open up something you're not supposed to, and configurations get weird. So then I'm going to do a git status here. There we go. So it is not added the .git ignore. So I'm going to do a git add dot. I'm going to do a git commit. Added my .git ignore. Git push. So here's the interesting thing. When I do git push, it just pushed to main. It says main. Here in a second, I'm gonna do a separate walkthrough. This is only for project structure. I'm gonna go over like git branches and git issues and git projects here in a second. So remember this, I'm gonna do this thing almost twice. This one's just for your project structure. So I wanted to add the git ignore. The next thing I want to do is add my front end. My front end is the, how do I get a React? How do I get a Vite app again? So I'm going to say Vite.js .dev/guide. I go about halfway down, and it's right here, npm create Vite latest. That's what I want. So I'm going to type that there. It's going to ask me what my project name is going to be. I'm going to say it's my dollop UI. I'm going to choose React. I'm going to choose JavaScript, and it tells me what to do. So I'm going to do cd dollop UI. I'm going to do npm install, and remember that's going to install all those node modules in there. I could run dev, and then it would actually show me that default React app. But I'm not going to do this. What I really care about is I'm going to cd ... back out of it. I'm going to do a git status. This is the biggest. When you're doing git commands and I'm in my UI folder, if I do a git add dot, it will add everything from my UI. But remember, I'm also going to have a back end. And if I make changes in the UI, in the front end, and in my API, which is my back end, and I do a git add in this thing right here, it will only add my UI folders. It will not add my API, my back end folders. So my suggestion is, anytime you run a git command, Do not do it in IntelliJ and do not do it in VS Code. Come back out to a terminal and make sure that you are in the root directory and run all of your Git commands from here. That's my suggestion. Will it work in VS Code? Yes, because when you open up in VS Code, it'll say, hey, there's like a parent Git. Do you want me to associate all of your stuff with the parent Git? And if you hit yes, it will associate it and it'll work just fine. But if you accidentally hit no, and then you assumed it was yes, or if you didn't get prompted, then weird things happen. So instead of weird things happening, if you always do this, it will always work. So it says that you added a bunch of things in this. So I'm going to say, well, add those things. Again, I'm on a Windows device, so it does all this weird stuff. I'm going to get commits -m added Vite front end template, something like that. All I did was I added the Vite template. What I want to point out here, though, is do you see? Hold on, I want to show my dollop UI. I know this is hard to see, but I have a node modules folder right here. But whenever you look at this, it did not add that node modules folder. One of the big problems that I've had before is if it adds the node modules folder, that node modules folder is pretty large and Git does not like it. I don't know if you remember, I think we had that issue at the very beginning when we were doing some project, like when we downloaded the LaunchCodes stuff, because they had all the projects in one. And whenever you would merge all those node modules up and it got really big and some people were having issues. So if you use the right git ignore stuff, it will not push those node modules. You don't want those. Okay. That's my UI. That's how fast it is. You just want to get a template out there. And to be honest, those teams tonight that want to do this, I would almost suggest you do this tonight. You can wait till Monday if you want to, but I'm not saying actually write any code. I'm just saying you do the Vite command. What was that again? npm create Vite, and then select your project. Okay, so I did my front end. Now I need to do my back end. To get my back end template there, I need to go to start.spring.io, Groovy, Java. You can select, as long as you are committing to a version, you can select whichever one you want to. You can even do Java 21 if you want to. It's whatever you guys decide as a project. For you guys specifically, I don't think the Spring Boot version for what you guys are doing will matter. So you can probably leave it as 3.3.1. But for the Java language, you might go ahead and just keep it as 17 because you guys have already downloaded that SDK or JDK version. So your stuff will just run a little bit smoother without you doing any prep work. So I would suggest for you guys to click the 17. And you get to select anything you want to here. So what was it, dollop? And then dependencies. Should we create this as one? Yes. Only one person should be doing this. Once you guys get all the template code set up and into GitHub, that's when you guys can all pull that down and then work through that. But I think only one person, yes, one person should do this. And remember, let's say we have Spring Web, we have JPA, we have MySQL driver. I think we have the validation. I feel like I'm forgetting one other one. We're not using Timely because that's usually the other one. You could do dev tools. I don't see a huge benefit to the dev tools because mine never really worked that well. If I wanted to do one of these for dev tools, there's a company or a framework called Quarkus that does the same thing as Spring, but they're not as big. They don't have as big of a following, so they are a little bit harder to find documentation for, but their dev tools are so much better. That's the whole reason they're still around, is because some developers really like their dev tools. But Quarkus. We're not doing time leaf because our front end is not going to live in Java. Our front end is going to live in React. You can always add dependencies. So I'll just stop so that we keep moving. But yes, you can always add more. So I wanted to show you this tool because I haven't shown this to you before. Let's say I forgot to add Spring Web to my original one. What I can do is I can add Spring Web right here. And instead of generating a whole new one, or instead of Googling the implementation, if you hit this Explore button, it will tell you what implementation things to copy and paste to put in there. So this is how I do it. Like in the real world, if I forget to add something, instead of re-downloading a whole new thing, I just go here and I copy. Oh, I forgot the data JPA, so I copied it here. So just another tip. All right, generate. It does this zip. I open up this zip. Remember, this is my download. This is my, oh, I forgot to, I didn't want to call it demo. I can change it later. I'm going to pull this over, but I am going to change the name. Nope, get back. Let me change the name. I'm going to call this Dollop API. There we go. And this is my code. And my code should be good. I should not have to run anything. This should just work. But I need to push it to GitHub. So remember, instead of opening up IntelliJ, because I'm working with GitHub, I'm going to do this. I'm going to stay in my main branch here. I'm going to do git status. It says that I've added this Dollop API. So then I'm going to do the git add dot. I'm going to do the git commit -m added API, and then git push. Have I done the git push yet? I can't remember. It pushed everything to main. So that means whenever I go back up to main and I refresh this, this is the file structure that I would do. Yeah, Trevor, good call out. So I did an optional lecture on Monday, and I did show a way. It was an okay way. There are a few ways to connect it, but and we worked through that. I can't remember if I recorded all the horrible stuff that I did that was wrong, and then fixed it, or if I fixed it afterwards. But those of you that were in there knew exactly what I'm talking about. It did go very, very long. It's a very, very long recording, but it is something there. The other thing is, I think I at least shared the Git repo. So for those of you that are just wanting to know those connector pieces, you can probably look back at the Git repo that I posted and see how that is. But to be honest, the API is super simple. It's the UI part that's a little bit more complicated, but definitely go back there. Okay, good question, Zach. So do I remove the Git ignores from the subfolders? You can, because of the way that I've constructed this Git ignore, you can, but because they don't hurt anything, I would just leave them there. I'm one of those that as long as it's not broke, I don't touch it. So that's where those extra Git ignores, because you're right, you should see in here that there's a Git ignore. This one is the one that's more like, remember how I said it would do node modules, but no slash and stars before it? So if you do your git commands in this thing right here, this git ignore would ignore the node modules. But if I ran git add here, because I didn't have this git ignore, it would sometimes still add the the node modules from the other directory, because the get ignore gets picked up at the level that you're calling it. So it's not on the, yeah, Ron's right. It's in the lecture resources. So that's all I'm going to show you for this part, which is your structure of your project. That's all there is. And then what I would do is download. Once one person does this, then everybody goes and does the clone, pulls it down, and then you guys start working individually. So the working individually, though, that's what I'm going to show here in a second. There are two ways to do the get ignore. What I did was I just clicked on where my code was, and I right-clicked and I said new, and I said text document, and I named it .get ignore. To be honest, the way that I like doing it better is right here. Have you guys ever done this, add files straight into GitHub? I think the problem with this one is, if your IA puts branch protection on here, I don't think it'll let you create this file. That's where I'm kind of worried. You might have to switch to your own branch. So if I do like a new branch and do this, but you can create a new file. You name it as .get ignore, and then you paste. That's not the right paste, but then you just paste your stuff in here and commit changes. That's one way to do it. The way I did it, which you might have to do just because of the branch protection rule, is you right click, you add a new text document, you call it .get ignore, and you remove the .txt. If it has the .txt, it will not work. You need to remove that part. And then you just create it there. You can open this in VS Code, or you can open it up in a Word doc or a Notepad++ or something. Doesn't matter how you open it up. Yeah, it says it. Yeah. And you just paste in the stuff. You literally just paste it in, you save it, and then you push it. I'm confused on your question. Here's what my project structure looks like. Whenever I click the API, here's your source folder for your Java, just like normal. There is a .get ignore if that's what you're asking, but remember, you technically, the one that I wrote was supposed to more or less override the need of any more, but again, I wouldn't, if it don't break, just fix it. Just let it work. Yeah, the dependencies, if you go back to any of your Spring projects that you have done, the only one you don't need anymore is the time leaf. So if you go back to any of the projects that you've done, even your graded assignment 4, it should be Spring Web, validation, JPA, and then SQL, I think is the 4. There might be another one, I can't remember. So. Project structure. That's in the lecture resources on Discord. I am going to now I'm going to talk about the actual project structure. Actually, I'm just going to use this one. So let's say you have this. How do you actually use GitHub projects? How do you get issues? So here's these issue tags. Here's the project. Well, the first thing you need to do is you all need to be a part of this. So I'm actually, oh, I need my phone. Hold on. You guys will be collaborators on yours. I'm going to add a certain collaborator. Okay. One. So I'm going to talk a little bit while that person's logging into GitHub and accepting that. So while we're doing that, so here's my code. But even before I do my code, to be honest, what we can do is projects. This says welcome to projects. Link a project. Your IA should do this already. So I'm just letting you know what they do to do this. You're going to do a new project. And then we get to name it whatever we want to. The template that we're going to do is a Kanban board. This is the most common one in software development is Kanban. And then I just named it whatever. So this is what a Kanban board looks like. I will zoom in so you can actually read them, but I just want you to look at the overlay. There's these columns. The columns are the backlog. These items have not been started. Ready means that they're ready to be picked up. They still haven't been started, but they've been flushed out. They have all the stuff they need for somebody to pick up. They're ready to go. And then once somebody picks them up, they're going to pull them into progress. And then in review, and then done. So in review is whenever you have finished your part and somebody else needs to review your code. So to way oversimplify this, this is what I would do whenever I'm dealing with this. You guys as a team, and I would probably just have one person do this and share their screen, but you could have multiple people. It's up to you. I would go ahead and add an item down here, and I'm going to say I need to add pretty home screen that allows users to add comments. Hey, so this is my feature, right? Whenever I do this, it's in draft, so I need to add a pretty home screen that allows users to add $p comments. So when I click on this, this is where you're going to kind of add some things. So add a description. Allow users to sign in. User creates a comment, right? Do you see how naturally I have already taken this one thing and broken it into three things? These are the kind of, some struggle with this and some it just naturally comes to. Do not think that it comes to everybody. I've done this enough that everything I do, I can break down into a further piece. And so this is what you guys need to work on as a team, is to figure out how I can break this apart. Now, the problem is if I break this apart, I actually have to create different things for it. So whenever when I'm doing this, you guys can mess up this backlog as much as you want to. So I'm going to update comments. I'm actually going to actually change this, edit title. So add pretty home screen is going to be its own. And this is going to need to add home screen for future development. So it's just adding the home screen. It's not adding any feature to it. I just need to add the home screen. So I update the comment. Okay, here's where issues come in. When I go over here, I can convert this to an issue. Once you have flushed this stuff out a little bit, remember I took away some things, I flushed it out. Once I do that, I'm going to convert this to an issue. And I'm going to, did I not save it? Save. Okay, convert to an issue. It's going to ask me which repo. Your repo should be at the top somewhere. So I'm going to add that to an issue. This is now an issue. This number is auto-assigned. So it's the first issue that has ever been on this repo. The numbers do not matter. So just know that that's an identifier. And it says who opened it. And it says that it was added to this project. This is the tracking system that a project manager or your team lead or somebody higher will want. They want that everything tracked. So this is why you're getting used to this. Do I need to do this to be a good developer? No. Do I need this to be a good developer that works within the system? Yes. So if you're doing your own personal projects, you may not need this, but if you want to work in the normal workforce, you need to learn how to do some of this stuff. Now, again, the actual creating of the tickets are usually done by a project manager, not by the developer. So if you're not super good at clearing out all the business requirements, know that somebody else is going to help you. So I'm just going to close out of this. So if you see here, it's in the backlog. I think that this is good enough that somebody else can pick it up. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add another item back here. I'm going to say, allow users to sign in. That's going to be my next one. I'm going to create another one. User creates comments. Okay. I guess you can just hit enter. So that's what I did there. Allow users to sign in. So whenever I go here, I need to add some more description. Add a button on the home screen that that allows users to log in. So as I'm even thinking about this, I'm like, so adding, I'm not going to separate this. I'm just going to talk through it, and I want to keep on moving on to show you more things. But if you notice, adding a home button, adding a button to the home screen that just does something could be its own task. And then what does it mean? What does it mean to allow users to log in? Well, then I also need to create a service, which is that connector piece between my front end and the back end, create a service that calls the user controller in my API. So you know how we did controllers in Java. So that's what you're doing. You want to create a service on the front end that calls that. Well, and then I need to create a user controller in the API to check user password is correct in database. So do you see how just this one flow, each of these should be their own tasks. They should not be in the same one. They need to be broken apart into smaller tasks. Again, I'm not going to do that for this example, but I want you to think about that, because I want to keep going on. So I'm going to update this. And again, once I get this where I want it, again, I would separate these out. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say convert to issue. It's going to say which repository. I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to close out of it. Now, if you look here, it's green. It's not in draft anymore. If I feel like I have enough information for somebody to work on it, I'm just going to bring it over to the ready state and do this. So Stephen, good question. I think based on the wording of LaunchCode, they do want you to call a separate external API. I think start coming up with those ideas, but that would not be the first thing I do. I think you need a full CRUD API operation. So figure out what you're going to do on the front end first. The secondary part is, you can call like Music APIs to give you music titles. You can call weather APIs to call weather. Like there's a ton of external APIs that you can eventually call in there. But I would focus on the CRUD operations until you get those done first. Then would the tags be useful to say tagging? You can use the tags for whatever you want to. Yes, this is your board. So when you talk about labels, these are the built-in labels. So bug, documentation. Oftentimes, let's say that you have to document something, you can actually give yourself a documentation task to then go document. That's perfectly acceptable. When you say duplicate, usually you tag it with duplicate and then you go ahead and mark it complete because it's already complete. But enhancement, this is the other ones that you might want to use. You don't have to use the labels. That's not a requirement, but you can. But then you can also edit labels and add front end and back end to them if you want to do that. That's perfectly fine. I usually title mine at the beginning, to be honest. I title mine either front end, back end, or to be honest, I like UI and API at the beginning of each of these so I know which one it's tailored towards. All of those are up to you guys. It's efficiency of the person. The other thing that I want to show you, so this is what I'm going to do. I want to add a pretty home screen, right? Because I am okay. I was going to do these as two separate things, and because I haven't, let me go back and change one thing. I want to show this. Oh. Right. I'm purposely not explaining to you what I'm doing. Some of you might know what I'm doing. Fine. Sometimes bad things happen, and when I go here, my main gets wiped out. All of my code is gone right here. So now, usually somebody doesn't wipe out your whole entire code base. Usually what happens is I added a feature, somebody else didn't merge that in with their branch, and so then they push their branch, and their branch does not have my feature in it, and they push the main, and then it overrides my feature. But I think it's in there, but then later on we find out, well, your stuff's not in there, but this other person is. This happens all the time. So in production level stuff, they do not allow you to push the main. So here's what this is what they want you to do. They set up these rules. I'm going to have to look at my cheat sheet. I made this. Go to settings, add branch rule. Oh, go to branches. I found a shortcut to this one this way. You can add rules here, but I'm going to add this one. I'm going to say, what did I call my test one? PR, like pull request to merge with one approval. I need to activate this. So this is what I'm suggesting all the IAs to do. Anybody that I make their repo, I absolutely do this. target branches, include default branch. That's main in this case. And then require a pull request before merging. And to be honest, if your group stays the size of 4, like most groups are, I would almost suggest that you change this to 2 approvers. These are the amount of approvals that you need beside yourself. So that, and the more people that approve, the less bad code gets put in. Okay. Whenever you commit, I like selecting this one. What this does is if I make a new commit on top of the same pull request, such as my feature branch, I push it up, somebody says, change this line. And so I go in and I change it and I push my code back up. This will dismiss the old pull request and actually update it with the new stuff. So I think that's what this one does. It also blocks forced pushes. So you cannot force push. You have to learn how to do this without force pushing. So I made this active now. So now, when I go back here and I say, hey, I made a mistake. I did. I made a mistake. I'm going to go to get I want to go ahead and I want to add a new README file, whatever it is, right? I want to add a new README file. So I'm going to say get status, and it says, okay, I have that README. So I'm going to say get add. And I'm going to say get commit added README. And it says, okay, you added the README. And then when I do get push, it says right here, rejected. And it tells you due to a repository rule violation. So now I have set it up. So whenever I change something, I cannot push to main anymore. This is supposed to safeguard exactly what I just did by deleting all this code. So this is the proper way to do it. I need to go to my feature branch. What did I call it? Other, I think. Get yeah, other. So get checkout other. Hey. When you create a new branch locally, it will not know what upstream to go to. So I do have to add this. What's cool about Git, you just need to read. It says to push the current branch and set the remote upstream, you need to do this. So I'm going to push this. And it says right here, create a pull request. That's what we're wanting. Now you can just click right here. Is it going to it? There it goes. It went on a different screen. Hold on. So it says, when I controlled clicked on this, it popped up this. It says there's no. So here's my other branch. You'll get used to looking at this. My other branch still has everything, but I want to change it to my master. So I'm going to create a pull request. And that pull request is going from other to main. That's not. That's so weird. One commit behind main. Yeah, which is the commit. Showing 25 changes. So you're going to create pull requests. So right here, I created this pull request. Remember my commit said bad, so I can this green means I have no merge conflicts. That's great. So I'm going to merge pull request. It should not have let me do that. Hold on. It might be because I'm an administrator. I don't think so. Hold on. Okay, here it is. I don't know why it did that. This is what it should have said. Review required. At least one approving review is required. So right now you cannot merge this. It won't let you because I said, hey, you need to have at least one pull request there. So I did invite one person to my to join me on this journey here. And what they need to do is they need to go over to files changed. And this will look differently here in a second, but they need to go over to here to review changes and they need to hit approve. So you go to the pull request, you open up the pull request, you go to files changed, and then you do review changes and then approve. While they are doing that, I want to keep moving. So I'm going to go to my project. Now, this is what you guys will do. So let's go back to the project view while they're doing that. On my project view, let's say, okay, that stuff's going to get taken care of. What I want to do is I want to add a pretty home screen. So I'm going to move this into in progress. And I am also going to create a branch right here. So whenever I take this, I'm going to assign this to myself. I can put labels on, you can put as much information as you want to on this. But instead of creating branches locally, once you check this out and assign yourself, this is how you're going to create a branch. The branch name, you can change this. You can change this. And depending on your team structure, you can change it to whatever you want to. What I suggest is always keep the issue number. That's what this is it's not just one to be one. It's one because it's the ticket, the issue number. And then you do need to have a name so that other people, when they look at it, they know what's going on. So if this is super, super long, I would scrunch it down a little bit. But let's do this. And I'm going to, I want to check out locally. I want to branch it off of main. So here's the question, and Milani said this. If I do this right now, my main is bad. So I could do it based off of other, but I'm acting like I have no clue what I'm doing. So I'm going to create this branch and we'll see what happens. We're going to check. It tells you right here how to do this. So once you create this, you want to do these commands. And now, normally I would do in like VS Code, right? Or somewhere. So I'm going to do these separate just so you guys kind of see what's going on. So I'm going to fetch the origin. It says that other has changed and it brought it down. And it also says that I have a new branch that's this pretty home screen. And so then I'm going to say git check out this pretty home screen. It says that it is set up to track this. If you remember, whenever I created my local branch, it didn't know about it up in the repo. So then I had to say, hey, set the path to go up to remote. On this one, it's going to naturally track it. And so I'm going to make my changes here. But again, I have this pull request. this pull request still in effect. And if you see, somebody approved my messages. Yeah, if you do it from, if you make the branch in GitHub and then pull it down, then it already knows where to track it upstream. If you make the branch locally, it doesn't know about it on the upstream, so you got to set it. So yeah, do you see how they put a comment? These comments, you need to put comments, whatever it is. And then I can merge pull requests, and then I can confirm. It is typical that the person making the change is the one that confirms the merge. They need to be the one that follows that whole entire life cycle. So I'm going to merge. Okay. You can, if you want to, delete branches. So because I did this other and I don't need to ever look at it again, I can hit delete. In the real world, you rarely delete the branches because you're usually paying for a good amount of storage on your repos. After a while, you might go through and clean some out, but we usually don't delete, and that's because we can roll back pretty easily. Again, if you have a master and a develop and feature branches, you can probably delete them and they won't be as bad, but it's usually for rollback purposes. Now let's look at my code. My code says that my pretty homes, well, that was, I think I just wiped everything. Look at that. Just wiped everything. This is going to happen. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my fancy get rebase. Yeah. So what I did, this is my favorite tool. I didn't think I was going to be able to show it today, but I'm going to. This rebase, this -I means interactive, means as it pops up in your tool. Whenever I downloaded Git, it asked me for my default text editor, and I said use VS Code. So if you remember, these are my things, my commits. If I ever want to do something, I'm just going to drop that commit. These are different things that you can do. I can drop this commit if I wanted to. That's the cool thing about rebase. I just go in here, find out what I want. Let's say that I wanted to combine these three. You can do a fix up or a squash. I'm not going to go over all of these, but this is how I drop commits. And then once I save this and exit out, it'll say, hey, I've done some things. I say get status. It says to use get pull. I don't want to get pull because I deleted something. So what's happening is it realizes that my thing is got unsynced. So I want to do a get push. It better let me. This is the only time that I do a get push -F. I hope that this allows me on my feature branch to do it. Yeah. On your feature branch, it does allow you to do get push. And let me see what my actual code looks like. I can do this by looking at my, you see how all my files are now there. I deleted that commit, and so all my things are there. But since I did a get push, now I need to do a get, I need to get a pull request. Actually, because this says add pretty home screen, I'm going to go into here and I'm going to go into my UI and I'm going to make a file. I'm just making fun of this. Added pretty home screen. So I just added my text file. You would actually do some code there. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to do a get add. I'm going to do a get commit added pretty home screen. I'm going to do a get push. Now let's see. what this looks like. Okay, there we go. This is what I'm used to seeing. Remember, some of the stuff I just showed you, it's because something bad went happening and some weird things happened. This is the happy path. Whenever I add something, it says I had recent pushes, and it would say compare and pull request. Is there a fast forward button? Oh. So this is, again, I'm able to merge this. I'm going to add, I added this. I can put an extra comment in here, whatever you want to do. And I'm going to hit create pull request. So again, whenever I do this, I'm going to go back to my project. And remember how I actually used this is the happy path. This is what we're supposed to be doing. I did it based off of this. I'm going to actually slide this over to into review and say it's in review. So now I usually talk to somebody and I say, hey, go in there and look at my code, pull it down and check my code. And then while they're checking their code, they can go and go to files changed. And it says, I've added this pretty home screen. So it actually tells you what happened here. You can review changes. And then that person needs to go in. Somebody else needs to go in and approve. Again, in my project, I move this over. They're going to pull request. Yes. So you will know, see how it says in development, successfully merging this pull request may close these issues. This is nope, that's not hold on. There it is. This is the branch. So yes, that person would just go right here. Do you see how there's a copy button right here? So I would hit this, I would go into my terminal and I would say git checkout and then paste that. Now, of course, I'm the one that made this change, so I'm already in this branch, but the new person would do the same exact thing. That would pull your branch down, and then they would just run it. They're not looking for, they will look at code just to make sure that the code looks fine, but they're not doing it to add code. They should not add code. If they wanted to add code, that's whenever they go to file change, and they would, in their stuff, they would say, I would add, and then you can actually add code segments in here, right? You can add code, and then either comment or request change. It doesn't really matter. And then you're going to hit that. And you see how it's a little bit of code and it comes into the comment. So it looks like somebody approved my stuff here. And then I can hit my pull request. On the high level, this isn't going to work like this every single time. On the high level, does this at least make a little bit of sense? Okay. The only other thing that you will need to start figuring out, which I will 100% hit whenever I get back, is when I'm working on this branch and somebody else is working on a different branch, and then we both push at the same exact time, and there's 2 pull requests, you have to pick one. And I always pick the one that is, I always pick the one that is by the person that is less good with get. And I let them merge their stuff in first. And then what I do is I go into my branch and I do a git, the common thing. I go to my branch and I do a git merge main. What this does is it merges main into whatever you have checked out. Because remember, right now I'm checked out with this branch. If I do git merge main, if there is something in main that I don't have in mine, it will merge that into mine. and then I can merge mine into main. But you cannot merge two commits into the same main without one of them going first, the other one collecting that new commit before merging again. So this will be your friend. Anytime you have somebody else that has pushed something and you didn't pick up, all you do is you run this command right here. Now, the only other hard part is if you change the same exact file as somebody else in that same commit, you might have merge conflicts. And so when you do this git merge main, it will say error. Don't just ignore this thing here, but it might say error. And that's whenever you get merge conflicts, those will happen sometimes. Hopefully they don't happen in the first 2 weeks. And so then whenever I get back, I can help you work through those, or your IAs can help you work through those. So I think because we're coming at time, I want to get off of here and let you guys have time to actually do something. Hopefully this was at least a little bit official. Again, you're going to work off of this projects. You're going to have to move things. And then once, again, to finish this out, once this is in review, I can say it's done. And you're just going to keep these and done. Okay, so good question. So would you cancel your, so pull is slightly different than pull request. You can pull whatever you want to, but your pull request, so I'm going to re-ask your question. Would you cancel your pull request, merge main, and then do another pull request? I am hoping not. I hope that this is set up so that you don't have to pull your pull request. When you, so right here, it says I would add code, right? But do you see how I have not merged this in? Get status. No, I don't want that. Get okay. So use git push to publish your local commits. No, get what? Nothing to commit, but it says that I'm ahead. Does it show that here? No, it says I'm behind a little bit. 1 ahead, 3 behind main. That's great. These are going to happen too. What I was going to show you though is on the pull request, I'm going to add one more thing to this and then resubmit. Do you see how I really messed it up whenever I did that one commit. This is why you protect main. This all of this confusion started whenever I forced a commit to main and it wasn't protected. If you just never do that, based on these protections, all the craziness that I'm happening right now will never happen to you. It's the whole reason I did it. I thought I could fix it though. But let's say that I added this new text document and then I say git add and then a git commit and a git push. What I want to show you on the pull request though, on the pull request, it should tell you right here that you did more things. So you do not have to create a new pull request. It will update your code right here. Somebody will still have to approve it again because you did make a change. They have to approve it. So the approval process starts over, but you don't have to redo your pull request. It will just know that you did some things and then you need to review again. So hopefully that at least answers that one. All right. Any other last minute questions? I do want to get you out of here. I could go over a few more things, but I think your brains are full for a second. Yeah.